Yo, what's up, everybody? It's been a little while, but welcome back to another episode of Casual Chat. It's been a little while, or maybe it hasn't been. It feels like it's been a long time, but I think that's just because so much has been going on when it comes to gaming. I've been playing a lot of different single-player games, but then there's a lot of MMO projects that I've been playing, and a lot of news regarding upcoming MMO projects. That as well as real life stuff, and I'll get into each and every one of those. But TLDR, I've been doing pretty well, honestly. Just gaming a lot, trying to take care of myself, just hitting the gym a little bit more. There was like this long stint of like 10 months after the first Descendant came out last year where I just stopped lifting and I just went into like giga degen streaming and gaming, and I've just finally snapped out of that funk, and I started taking care of myself a little bit more again, which is good, albeit it means a little bit less streaming hours, but hopefully people don't mind that much. We went from like 18-hour streams, 15-hour streams down to like 8-hour streams, 9-hour streams, and I'd like to say that that's a little bit healthier. But yeah, let's kind of break down what kind of stuff has been going on as of late. Now, there is another game that is coming out, and it is called Crystal of Atlan, who also happens to be the sponsor of today's videos. That's right, I'm taking sponsors. We get that back. But yeah, Crystal of Atlan, interesting game. It is a PC mobile title, so it is one of those extremely rare times where I take a mobile sponsor. However, I played this game during its beta some months ago, and I expected very, very little. In fact, I was expected to be disappointed, and those expectations were subverted because the game was surprisingly fun. I had a really good time playing that game. Now, the game is very closely inspired by Dungeon Fighter Online. Obviously, it's the resemblance is uncanny. That are similar, from class designs to the whole like daily structure, the whole fatigue point system. And so if you're looking for an infinite grind game, this is not it. It is also not a gacha game. So I know some people saw the anime aesthetic and they immediately thought gacha. Not a gacha game. You're not pulling for characters. It is a action MMO. So if anyone's ever played games like Soul Worker or Closers or Kurtzbell in the past, it's like that, but the combat's way more refined than any of those games. And it has RPG elements where you're, leveling up, gearing up your character, doing raids. One of the things that was surprisingly really fun about the game to me was the PvP was really good. It's 1v1 equalized arena. And it was a really enjoyable experience just playing the PvP. It's been a little while since I played a good PvP game in a hot sec. But yeah, really, really fun game. Me and Stoops and our communities, we're all planning on playing it. The game is going to come out on, by the time this video goes up today, at 8 p.m. PST, PDT, PST, I don't know. It's literally going up today. So if you're interested in the game, check it out in the description. It's got 11 classes. They're all really distinct from each other. I think the fighter class and the magician class are the ones that I'm going to be focusing on. Starbreaker and magician. But they're all very diverse from one another. Really cool class fantasy. Lots of different skills you can pick from, and just great combo oriented gameplay. So yeah, we'll have a guild in-game. They're called fleets for anyone who plans to join us in our communities for both main characters and alts. And I think it'll make a really good side game. I'm really looking forward to it. So now I'm juggling. And thank you, Crystal of Atlan, for sponsoring this segment of the video. So now I'm gonna be juggling Lost Ark, Dungeon Fighter Online, Crystal of Atlan. I'm gonna try Core Punk on the 31st. I have another sponsor for that. I did really like that game as well. I think I did like 2 back-to-back 20-hour streams of that. Very hardcore game. Just really interested to see how it's changed. I probably won't play that one long term. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But it was a really interesting game back when I last tried it, so I want to see what has changed now that they're entering full release. So this year has been absolutely crazy with game releases. Just really, really, really crazy. I remember we just went back to back to back, from Blueprints to Kazan the First Berserker to Expedition 33. And those games were just fantastic. Starting with Blueprints, that game was recommended to me because my favorite game of all time is Outer Wilds, and people were like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be like, it's kind of like an Outer Wilds experience. You kind of go in, you get information, and then the day kind of resets, and then you use that information to try and get further into the game and solve more mysteries." The mysteries are kind of evergreen; they're there from the very beginning, but with more knowledge, you're able to uncover and unlock more things. I ended up playing it for about 30 hours, and after you quote unquote beat the game, there's still just so much more to it. I've heard that completionist in it is like 80 hours, 90 hours, so there's still so much more for me to solve. Critics say that an issue with the game is that there's an element of RNG, because there is a roguelike element to it where you kind of, the layout of the mansion changes on a day-by-day basis, but if you find information, maybe the thing that you need to interact with might not be there on the next day. And then like the more you progress, the more that tends to happen. So I can see how people were frustrated with it, but I actually had a great time with it. I thought it was a really, really good game. So I highly recommend it if you like puzzles and mysteries. Kazan, the First Berserker. Now, this game was a treat. This is a Souls-like action game from Neopol, a subsidiary of Nexon. And what's funny is this game used to be known by another name that some of you might be familiar with, Project BBQ, which was supposed to be spiritual successor MMO to Dungeons and Fighter, the massively popular game in Asia, which I started playing a lot of recently. And Nexon ended up canceling that project altogether, and it ended up forking off into a bunch of other projects. One of them being Kazan, the First Berserker, another being Project Overkill, which is an MMO, which is now, as I've heard, slated for a 2027 release after some community reception being fairly negative from the gaming showcase from G-Star back in 2024. Some people were fairly scathing and critical, and generally speaking, they received negative feedback about the aesthetic of the game, so they've kind of gone back to the drawing board, and so it seems that it's kind of gotten pushed back. I was expecting a 2026 release with a beta sometime in 2025, early 2026, but now we've seen in their projections 2027 is more likely for the game. And it is confirmed PC mobile, but I don't think that should deter anybody because the original game was playable on mobile as well. And honestly, these days, mobile games, in many cases, they kind of outshine PC games. And in also a lot of cases, a lot of mobile games are not really designed to be played in mobile, especially in the case of Korean games where they are PC mobile, but then they're kind of poorly optimized for mobile devices, and you're better off using the PC client. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But yeah, then there was DNF Duel, which was their fighting game. And I remember people were really hyped up about that one because it was being made by Arxis Systems. Arxis Systems? I'm not sure. Which is apparently like one of the best developers for fighting games in general. But the game wasn't very successful, unfortunately, which was a bit of a shame. And they're working on a gacha game that they announced not long ago as well. And these are all part of the DNF universe. Now, Kazan, I think, ended up using the most assets from the scrapped Project BBQ, and it was a really good game. Now, the director denies that it's a Souls-like, but you know, it's got your typical like bonfire, leveling up, parry system, high difficulty, etc., etc. And in a way, I would agree with him. In many ways, the gameplay is closer to like kind of like a DMC. Like you have an arsenal of weapons, you have different combos you can use, and all that kind of stuff. You unlock more combos with skill points, etc., etc. So yeah, in a way, it's a blend of like Dark Souls meets like action DMC kind of gameplay. But it was a really good game. It had a great length. The boss fights were very memorable. It was very polished with basically no bugs. They didn't reuse assets that frequently. Generally speaking, most enemies were pretty unique, and if they were reused, they had unique abilities to them, and so it was kind of like a tasteful reusing of assets. So I thought it was a really good game. Highly recommend. Sadly, Nexon allegedly reported that it didn't do as well commercially as they hoped it would, which I hope doesn't deter them in any way, shape, or form in global endeavors in the future, because honestly, people were generally raving about Kazan. The reviews are really good. The critical reception was really good. And I think people liked it. Maybe not to the same acclaim as something like Lies of P, but pretty close, and really a great effort from Nexon. I know a lot of people, when they think of Nexon, they think yuck, but I think in recent years they've turned a new leaf, and they've put out a lot of solid games that are worth mentioning for one way or another. But yeah, so I thought that was great. And then Expedition 33 came out of, well, not really nowhere, but it blew my mind just how good that game was. It was such a treat. As someone who loves turn-based games, as someone who enjoys strategy in video games, I really, 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 really liked Expedition 33. In fact, I liked it so much, I'd go as far as to say that it is my third favorite game of all time. The only games that are above that are Outer Wilds and Final Fantasy Tactics, in that order. But I mean, to enter my top 3 favorite games of all time and being like a recent release is kind of outrageous. Now, I couldn't tell you what my 4th and onward favorite games is, but I could tell you for certain that those are my top 3. But yeah, really, really, really recommend playing Expedition 33. The price is great. The gameplay is great. The OST is great. It has a good length that doesn't overstay its welcome for a game that's technically in the JRPG category, even though it's not made by Japanese people. It's made by the French. Yeah, I really couldn't recommend it enough. Just such a beautiful game. Some people might not like the fact that I'd say that, you know, if you like Dark Souls, you'd like this game. But I really would say that if you like action combat, and you're averse to the idea of turn-based games, give this game a shot. Honestly, Super Mario RPG did this kind of thing first, the whole active elements when it's not your turn to block and defend. But this game takes it and puts it with a great, compelling story that really sticks with you. A lot of JRPGs, I think they kind of suffer from this whole notion of just like these classic tropes and cliches, but I thought Expedition 33's story was brilliant. Now, it does get kind of weird towards the end, but if you just look at it through a lens in which you kind of look at the overall picture and the message that it's kind of trying to tell, you know, lessons of life and how people deal with the coping mechanisms related to grief, I think it's a very compelling story, and it really stuck with me, which is a great hallmark from any game, really. Now, there's as far as single player games go, I'm not really sure. There's games that I obviously want to play. Terraria. There are people that are working on these really extensive mod packs for the first time, and I just started playing Minecraft recently, modded Minecraft for the first time, and it just hit me with just this overwhelming sense of nostalgia, because I love Minecraft. I love building in Minecraft. Terraria, I think, has better content in terms of like stuff to do, but Minecraft building is just next to none, and modded Minecraft is such a treat. I went into Ocean Block 2 as my first modded Minecraft pack because I was like, oh, you know, I'll just start with something that looks like more adventure based, low on tech. Turns out lots of tech mods in this game pack, and like honestly, it's a bit overwhelming, but it gives me kind of like these satisfactory kind of vibes while also, you know, messing around with elements really that remind me of Raft and Subnautica, and so it's been a ton of fun. And what's great is, like, as I play these games, chat is also playing these games as well, and it makes for great discourse. Now, MMOs is where this gets really juicy. I've been playing a few MMOs. Lost Ark, as you guys already know, I've been playing that a bit less because I'm on maintenance mode until the big raid. Kazaros, the big bad, the finale of this chapter, and basically the main antagonist of the first arc of Lost Ark, no pun intended, is coming out this summer. It's a 2-part dungeon, and I think this is just my guess. It's probably going to be 1 part in July and maybe 1 part in like September or something like that. There are 2 parts of a whole dungeon, but it's supposed to be like this incredible encounter against what gives off final boss vibes. Obviously, there's a whole story beyond that, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but we're probably going to get more definitive news on that and when it's happening at Loa On this June 21st. Save the date if you guys like joining me and Stoops as we watch Loa On and look at the future of the game. The date has been announced for that. It is June 21st, and it comes after a slew of news, which, well, if you're watching this video and you saw the title, is really important. Basically, Lost Ark is hitting a turning point because of the consistent failures in the past couple years. The game has basically gotten increasingly more stressful and increasingly more difficult to keep up with, and increasingly more difficult to play in general, that I think every region of players has kind of hit like a straw that broke the camel's back kind of point, where everyone's just angry. And this is such a contrast to where we were 3 years ago, where people were hopeful and generally positive and had a great relation with the developer Smilegate. But these days, very, very, very few people would defend Smilegate, and honestly, neither would I. They have shown a great deal of incompetence, and whereas they occasionally make 1 good decision, they'll make 2 bad decisions. And so all this came to a head, and what ended up happening was the director of Lost Ark, he did a live stream where they've basically announced that they are essentially changing the direction of the game, and it is the great casualization of Lost Ark. And before you kind of like, you're like, what? Casualization? Isn't that a bad thing? Well, the game was just so oppressively bad for new and returning players to join that it just was no good. You couldn't recommend it. Like every time someone wanted to come back to the game, I'd be like, oh yeah, you can enjoy it for a little bit, but then with the caveat that eventually you'd probably hit a wall that'll make you quit. And nobody wants to hear that. Who wants to hear that? It's like, oh yeah, you'll play it, but eventually it's going to make you want to quit. That's terrible. And every time someone came and asked that, which was really frequent, by the way, Lost Ark gets a surprising amount of new and returning players. Every time I had to be like, yeah, you can come back, but you're probably going to want to quit at some point. And that's just this terrible thing, but it's also the truth, because like you can play the game, you can enjoy solo raids, there's a good amount of horizontal content, and for all intents and purposes, you'll probably like it. But then you'll eventually reach a point where you hit a brick wall where in order to progress, you actually have to play with other people, and there's no other option. In other games, there's other options. There's solo avenues or alternative ways to gear up. But in Lost Ark, at some point or another, the only way to continue forward is to group up. And because of the way that the game is designed, it created this kind of like me mentality where everyone was looking out for themselves. They didn't care about the new guy. Now, of course, they tried to remedy this by making these programs where if you play with a new player, you get stuff. But it was just a short-term solution. And honestly, all it really did was make people kind of carry their own alt accounts that were new players in order to reap these rewards. And so Smilegate has finally decided to come up with a new solution, which is not a new solution. It's actually a solution that's been employed by other games in the past, namely World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. And it is casualization of the game. And the idea is just make the game really easy. Make the raids really easy. And make them accessible so that new players can actually not have an immense amount of stress going into these raids, and existing players won't mind new players coming into their raids if it means that they have a body and can just start the raid. Before, the raids were difficult enough where one person that made a mistake could essentially cause the whole thing to just disrupt and break down and disband. And that's kind of what created this kind of like toxic gatekeeping environment, was the game's design. Yes, you can blame the players, but ultimately it was the design of the game that pushed players in this direction. And so the developer is equally in part to blame. And so their strategy is now to make the game a lot easier. They're reducing mechs. Normal mode of raids no longer have one-shot patterns or one-shot mechs. If you fail them, well, now everyone just takes a lot of damage, but it's not an instant wipe. Hard mode has been made a little bit easier, and solo mode has been made easier. And before you're like, oh, solo mode made it easier, it's already so easy. Well, it turns out new players were actually struggling with that. It just happens to turn out that when you're an actual new player, the game is quite difficult, even in solo mode. And so now, with the game being a lot easier, someone can just go from solo mode and hopefully jump into normal mode, and then people who are doing normal mode can make their way to hard mode. And on top of that, a recent update in Lost Ark recently added revives into the game. And no, it's not a supporter that's reviving you. The way they did it was slightly different. Basically, the way it works now is that in all modes, including hard mode, every player is allowed one revive, as long as it wasn't from like a raid wiping pattern. If you just took like a sudden spike of damage and you died, well, you get one mulligan, and everyone gets one life. It's not a shared pool, so you might be wondering, like, whoa, doesn't that make the game a lot easier? And yeah, it does, but it also removes an enormous amount of stress, because yeah, Lost Ark is the kind of game that if you let your mind wander for just a moment, or you just have slightly bad luck, you could end up dead in floor POV, and then you have to sit there kind of like sad and just watch for the rest of the time. But now that everyone gets a revive and gets one mulligan, people get to just kind of have more fun with it. If someone dies, it's no big deal. They get right back up. And everyone plays more aggressively too, because they have that one life back in stock. Now, if you die 2 times, that's another story. If you die 2 times, that's pretty embarrassing. That being said, people love it. It went from like kind of like stressful, almost like antagonistic, because like you'd form these parties and you'd be wary or suspect of the person next to you. But with the game kind of getting easier and a little bit more lax, people can kind of enjoy doing their homework without having to worry about a restart. And sometimes you make a party, right? And then you go into the raid, and then one reset and everyone is tilted. Everyone's on edge. But now if someone dies, well, you can just kind of keep going. And then if someone else dies, you can still keep going. Now, of course, casualization is bad for some people that enjoy a challenge, but they did announce that they are working on a new difficulty, and the new difficulty is basically a revamped hell mode. Now, it's not really hell mode because it's not equalized and you're not using like fake stats. So your gear does come into play, but it'll be tuned up difficulty appropriately with new mechs. So it is kind of like an unequalized hell mode, kind of like Hell Hanumatan, or kind of like an Extreme Bolton situation, but probably harder than Extreme Bolton, because Extreme Bolton was pretty easy. But they call it Catastrophe mode when it was first announced in China, and Challenge mode for the global version. And it turns out that Korea is also going to get this. China would be the first region to experience this with A gear, their first major raid of tier 4 this summer, and then all the other regions should be getting it later after Kazaros. So I think this strategy works well. Casualization is good for the bulk player base, and then all you need to do is just give people these challenge modes that are tuned up, that only reward vanity or only reward honor or prestige, and not like a material gain. But the people that like enjoy the thrill of seeking a challenge. And this works pretty well in games like Final Fantasy 14, where they occasionally, I think once a year, give ultimate modes to their player base. And it's enough. Because in the grand scheme of things, right, casualization is good if it means that the player who's starting the game will actually stick with the game. If they hit points of friction early on, well, they're not really like committed. They haven't spent a lot of time with the game. They don't have like an incentive to really stick with the game. And it sounds messed up, but essentially that is what it is. If you play a game enough, well, you're gonna have some level of sunk cost fallacy where you spent your time, your money, or both, and you're gonna want to stick to the game. And if the game is gradually bleeding players in every region, the only way that you can fix that is by actually retaining the new players that come in. So by improving their new player experience, by making the game more accessible and adding more content for them, because they are adding more solo related content that people can enjoy, just activities that they can do, they might actually stay long enough to become, veteran players or seasoned players that are interacting more with the existing player base. And that's how you get the game to either grow or stop bleeding, both of which are vastly preferable to bleeding to death. And so it looks like they are trying to improve the game in a meaningful way. So after Kazuros, apparently the next leg of the journey is called Adventure. Things will kind of ease up a little bit, and the focus of the game's story will be going on these like grand escapades, wonders of the world kind of deal for a little bit, kind of like a pseudo beach episode. So it might be a little on the boring side. I am very curious on where the story is headed. If you are curious about the story of Lore Arc, I recently uploaded a video going over the entire story. I remember there were a lot of people who watched my channel that liked that. That video has been out for like a month or two. And yeah, it's got storytelling that I wish I could have done it better. If I could go back, I would do it better. I would go for a more cinematic storytelling style rather than like this kind of like audiobook narration, but it's definitely good enough, and it completes its objective. But yeah, so there is that. I am very curious to see what the future of the game looks like. Loa On again is this upcoming June. It's about to be June in like a week. Wow, time flies. And I really just want to see them improve the game in meaningful ways. Like I could talk about this forever, but let's move on to the next topic. I've been playing another MMO on the side called Dungeon Fighter Online. Funny, we talked about it earlier. Now it's come back. I recently just got back into that game, and God, I am just shocked how well the game holds up. And more importantly, I am just floored by how good the new player experience is, except for one terrible part. And God, if anyone from Nexon ever sees this video, you need to stop false banning actual new players, because it is a terrible experience. Just like how we go back to Lost Ark, the thing is, when someone gets interested in a game, at the very start is when their excitement is at the absolute highest. That is when they want to play the game the most. So if you trade ban them, they're not going to stick with the game. You need to find a solution, because we can't have this thing where every time I bring a new player into the game from my stream, they get trade banned, and then I'm like, yeah, it's like a rite of passage. What the hell? No, this is terrible. Fix your shit, Neopol. You got a good game with a great new player experience, except for that one critical thing which makes people who start your game want to not continue it. Fix your shit. Now, that aside, their new player experience is kind of fantastic. They give so many free things to the players and so many boosts that even though the structure of dailies and weeklies and bosses is basically identical to Lost Ark basically gets it from Dungeon Fighter, they give you so many characters. I mean, at the time of me recording this video, if you started playing the game, you'd have 4 boosted characters that are basically endgame ready right from the onset. So even though it's daily, weekly gated, you got a lot of characters you can play right away. Meanwhile, in Lost Ark, they give you one character, and that one character is basically crippled at the end game relative to everyone else. And I feel like Lost Ark can learn something there by basically taking the idea of, hey, if a new player starts playing the game, they want to play the game a lot. There's 2 methods that we can do in order to like fulfill this. We either make more content that they can participate in beyond just the weekly like 3 raids, which they are trying to do with the Paradise system. I didn't go over that, but if you are curious about that, you can check out any of the notes about the last live streams. or just give them more boosts so they can try out more characters. And honestly, that solution seems almost better because Lost Ark, similar to Dungeon Fighter Online, one of the big appeals and draws of the game is that it has really cool class fantasy. They got a lot of cool classes, so of course, someone who starts the game, they might be interested in trying more than one class. Haven't you ever had that dilemma where you start a game and you're like, oh, what class should I play? Well, I mean, the better solution is if you can try all the ones that interest you, but if you only can pick one, well, that's a bit problematic. And so I feel like Lost Ark can learn a thing or two there by giving more boosts and more frequently so that people can actually enjoy the game, especially in games like these, which are so alt driven. What is the harm in giving another boosted character? What is the harm in helping out one character when we're trying to sustain these rosters of 6+ characters? You know, throw us a little bit more of a bone in that case. Besides for that, the dungeon fighter experience, the other thing that it does so well, which honestly it just seems like common sense to me, is that when you make alts and you make characters, these characters can actually grow without spending money and resources. And that sounds like such an outrageous concept, but it works so well. Let me spitball here for a second. In Lost Ark, when a new event or a new class comes out, how excited are you for it? The odds are, if you're hearing this question, you'd be like, it depends on the class. Because in the back of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, I'd have to set aside resources to upgrade the character. I would have to get a new set of gems for them. I'd have to get legendary outfits for them. This, and this, and this, and this, and this. I'd have to do their elixirs and their transcendence, and then I gotta advance hone them. I gotta do their karma. And it's like all this kind of rushes at you as you're thinking about raising a new character. And honestly, it just sounds tiring. To the point where even me, a whale, am just tired at the very thought of making a female paladin come this summer. She comes out probably in like early July in probably all the regions, if I had to guess. They've been pretty good at releasing new classes pretty close for everybody these days. But yeah, it's just tiring. But in Dungeon Fighter Online, when you make a character, well, the challenge mainly is they give you basics of everything that you would get from the cash shop. And they give you a +12 weapon right off the cuff, which in Lost Ark terms, that's like giving someone a +22 or +23 weapon, and they give them on every boosted character. And it's like, what do you even do with gold in this game? I mean, obviously there is stuff you can do. DFO is still by far the most pay-to-win MMO in the world, but it's a free-to-play friendly one. It's the most pay-to-win game, but among the Korean MMOs, it might be the most free-to-play friendly one at the same time because of how much free stuff that they give you and how nice the experience is just playing free to play. And if you don't believe me, ask my community. Most of them aren't paying a goddamn penny, but they're playing the game and they're enjoying it. They started playing it recently, and most of them are addicts that are making all these characters now. Most of them just want new boosts, though, because they don't want to spend real money to raise a character manually, and understandable. But with the rate at which they give out boosts, I mean, it kind of facilitates it. But yeah, basically, like when you play a character, you can drop upgrades, and the character grows, and it can do higher level content. No, you're not spending gold. You're not pulling away resources from other characters in order to do this. They're just naturally getting stronger. And my God, that is just such a simple idea that works so well. Meanwhile, in Lost Ark, every time you think about raising an alt character, well, you got to take resources away from your main. Those are resources that your main could have used in order to get stronger, and there's like an opportunity cost involved. And it's like, whoa. I could either use my resources on my alt, or I can use it on my main. I'd prefer to use it on my main. And then your alt kind of gets older and relatively weaker. And the worst part about that is it gets relatively less fun to play, right? And my point that I'm trying to make is, let's say you're like a 1700 character. Would you enjoy playing a 1400 character today? No. Do you enjoy playing your 1640 alts compared to your 1700 main? Probably not. Do you want to raise those alts so that they're fun to play? Yes. Can you do it reasonably? No. And I feel like this can be remedied simply by... This is gonna... Bear with me here. Making bound gold character bound and then juicing it up. Like, just amp that shit up. Instead of giving people character bound, which they funnel to their main, which just honestly defeats the purpose. Just make the bound gold character bound and juice it up. Instead of someone getting like 20,000 bound gold, how about you give them like 100,000 bound gold that they have to use to upgrade that character? Now they have no choice but to raise that character. And you got to facilitate this by giving them the other things that they need by playing the game. Juice up the bound mats. These aren't interacting with the economy. Let players get enough bound mats where they can actually reasonably do taps, right? And these are bound mats. They can't give them to their other characters, so now they're using them on their alts, and their alts are naturally growing. And to that end, of course, arrays. You'd have to make arrays accessible somehow by making a vendor where maybe you can buy like a certain amount, like 200, 300, 400 each week that refreshes weekly with that bound gold. And the entire idea behind this is that you're making these alts and they're making some tradable gold, right? They're making some tradable gold that you're probably going to funnel to your main, but at the same time, they're making enough materials where they can also grow and they stay relevant and fun. And God, I just think people would just enjoy playing their characters way more instead of like this chore of logging into a character that basically just serves as a mule to get gold for your character. And so I really enjoy that part about DFO. I love seeing my characters, all of them, grow each week just by doing dailies and weeklies, and it's just such a nice experience in comparison to Lost Ark. And Chrono Odyssey, I know countless people have been asking me about that, and all I can say is, if I don't seem excited for the game, it's because I've already played the game. I was in the closed test some months back, and I can't talk about the game just because, you know, I just can't. But obviously, I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play it. If for those of you guys who've been watching me for a long time, I've been talking about Chrono Odyssey longer than any other creator out there. I've been following this thing from its fucking infantile stages years and years and years ago. So yeah, of course I'm gonna play it, and I feel like that me affirming that I'm gonna play it should tell you all that you need to know. And obviously, when the game comes out, I'll talk way more about my experiences with it and what I know. But honestly, I really expect so much of it to have changed since I last touched it, because they were very, very open to feedback in the closed test. We did the test, and then, you know, obviously the developers kind of like sat down with us, asked us our thoughts on it, and yeah, we tried to give them as honest feedback as we possibly could. Now, obviously, people who are in a closed test are going to be biased. They're going to be kinder because, you know, they want the opportunity to keep testing the game. So they're going to be a little bit nicer. So once the game actually falls into your laps, I'm sure the developers will get a lot more feedback that they're looking for, as unbiased and as raw as can be. But that test is in June. So if you haven't already, their Steam page is up. You can request access for it. This is not sponsored, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it and what your plans are in regards to that as well. For me, I don't think there's an MMO that I'm super excited for until Overkill in 2027, but I think I will really enjoy playing these games in the meantime. I'm hoping that Lost Ark kind of corrects course a little bit and actually can fix the bleeding, staunch it, and actually make the right calls, because from what I've understood, it looks like they're going to try to not be as stubborn about things anymore. For example, the implementation of a combat analysis that gives you a DPS breakdown after fights. They finally confirmed they're going to do that. There's supposed to be a support rework this summer, which is they've been talking about support since forever, but this is the first time they're confirming a rework for support. And my guess, this is just my guess, is that they're going to make supports able to enjoy a DPS playstyle as well. And here's why I think that. Recently, Dungeon Fighter Online has announced and shown gameplay of a class called Paramedic. And for all intents and purposes, it is literally a DPS that they're calling a support. Her gameplay just does not say support at all to me. And with female paladin releasing, who, I mean, sexy character, just this crusader class fantasy, I think they are going to kind of go that route of making supports more interesting to play. And this works for many reasons. If they make it so that a support character can also DPS and is appealing, more people will play the class. People who want to support will make the class. People who want to DPS will make the class. Them releasing a large, rather endowed female character at the time of summer when bikinis and swimsuits are also being sold, no mere coincidence, you know? And they also confirmed during this time that the existing support classes will also get overhauls. So I really think they're going to move in that direction. They also cited how supports in Lost Ark were too strong. And I think on average, they make up 38% of a party's damage. And so they have to basically find a way to make support classes interesting, but not overpowered. Because right now they're overpowered. And as far as anyone will say, kind of bland and not great, or there's not a lot of incentive to make a support. So they've got a tough challenge in order to fix that. But yeah, really, I hope the best for Lost Ark. I'm still playing it, of course. I'm going to keep following it on its journey. But in order to move away from this image that they've built up over the years of there's a raiding MMO, where all you can do is raid, there's nothing else but raiding, it's going to be so hard. It's been built up over so many years. It's really solidified itself as that raiding, hardcore, Korean pay-to-win MMO. And it's like, it's going to, yeah. To change people's opinion on that, it might never be able to. But we'll see. Here's to hoping that the new direction is the right decision. I think it is, but only time will tell. Other than that, I mean, real life, there's not too much going on. I think the only thing that I can really report is that Lustboy has moved out of the house, and not for any bad reason. He's actually moved to Georgia on the east coast of the U.S. He got a job opportunity that includes housing and food with his uncle, and apparently it's a really, really lucrative job. He's going to be working as a getaway driver for the Korean Mafia for bank robberies. So that's why he needed to get his driver's license, so that he could, you know, drive away. No, but actually he's working with HVAC stuff, which should be really interesting, and I really wish him all the best. I think because he moved all the way to the East Coast and now his ping is just completely dead when it comes to Lost Ark. I think he's quit Lost Ark, but he'll be participating in the Kazaros race as an analyst for Powder Snow's team. So they're going to have a 9th man to help them break down mechs to try and secure the first clear. As for me and Kazaros, well, I got a group. Last year, or was it the year before that, with Faymine, we had Team Last Pull, and it was supposed to be a party that would really try at it. But what ended up happening was there was a huge differences in expectations of what the party wanted to do. Basically, we had party members who wanted to go for top 3, and honestly, between gear and skill, the best we could have mustered was bottom, like 10th, 9th, 8th place, and that kind of culminated into the group disbanding, because in order to have a chance of being even in the top 5 for that matter, we would have had to grind an ungodly amount of time, and not everybody in the party was equipped to be able to handle those kinds of long raid hours, and it led to the group dismantling. And then it became so hard to pug after that, because you would pug, you'd end up in a group, and then you'd prog, it would disband, then the next group would be less progressed, and you'd have to wait for people to learn, and it became so difficult. And then also in Team Last Pull, besides for Tofu, I was the only English person, so every time they did comms, it was all in Korean, and they'd talk for 10 minutes, and afterwards they'd clue me in, and they'd sum it up in 10 seconds, and I'd be like, what was the other 9 minutes and 50 seconds of discussion? was that stuff important? It's like, oh yeah, it was important, and God, I wish I could participate in this conversation. So for Kazaros, I am in a group with basically entirely English people, and as you guys know, I don't live in Korea anymore, and we learned after Thaymine that people who break TOS will be banned. So if it does look like there's a chance for us to be in the top 10, we will probably FF go next, as in just not finish the fight. I don't really want to get banned. That would ideally that would suck. That would suck. You might be wondering, like, what are the chances that you actually make it in the top 10? Surprisingly, higher than you might think. What I have learned from Thaymine's race is it is not the best teams that get into the top 10. It is the most persistent teams. And why is that? It's because most people who play MMOs these days are old. They're old, normie people who actually have real life responsibilities, and they cannot afford to prog for more than 2 weeks in most cases, let alone 1 week, like 1 week, let alone 2. And so most of those groups end up disbanding, and then they run into the same problems where it's like, oh, they got to reform now and find people with similar progression. So what I have learned from Thaymine is that the actual best teams and parties will fill up those first few spots deservedly, but then after that, for like the last like 3 or 4 spots, it will come down to whichever group can actually stick together long enough to finish the fight. And I think I have a group that is that is down to be very persistent. We're trying to like iron out everyone's expectations so that everyone goes into this with the same mentality of what we're trying to accomplish, how many hours. And I think we just want to prog it for the sake of progging it. Obviously, we don't want to be in the top 10 because that can be very problematic from the reasons that I mentioned before, as I don't live in Korea anymore. So, but we want to try anyways because it's fun. Like, when else will we get an experience like that? So I hope that's something that you can look forward to as those raids roll along. I will be progging it on Breaker. Originally, I was going to do it on Wild Soul because, well, I thought she would be really easy to play, but then they kind of nerfed the build that I was playing, and then they buffed Breaker. And I'm gonna be real with you guys, I'm 7 months dry from spending money in Lost Ark, and I've been whaling in DFO instead. And I don't really want to whale more in Lost Ark, and the Breaker already has a 25 weapon and a 9/7 stone and is pretty much done with all systems already. So if I can just kind of play him and just focus on him, then I don't really need to swipe anymore to max out his power in preparation. He's like already set. He's already good, and I already generate like 500,000 to 600,000 gold a week. So if I really need anything, well, it just takes a few weeks to get it. Not to mention, like his gems. I have 3 level 10 gems, but there's not really a point in getting more because, well, so much damage isn't just 1 gem. It's Shura. So he's kind of set, and I'd like to just keep it that way. So I'm going to take Shura. Saves my wallet pain, and I mean, Shura is super comfy anyways. I just hope there aren't instant death patterns that will kill me through shield, kind of like red patterns from Thaymine. There probably will be. And that's it. This casual chat was way longer than I thought it would be, but I hope it was a good chat. I will see you guys next time. Once again, thank you to Crystal of Atlan for sponsoring this video. Information on registration can be found in the description below. Later, guys. See you guys on the stream.